They competed for attention with stories of their latest investment victories. My late husband's old navy suit, carefully altered to fit my frame, felt like armor against their crushing judgment. Victoria, Margaret Blackwell's voice sliced through the prestigious chatter. I almost didn't notice you there in the corner, dear. Still living off that modest widow's allowance? I took a careful sip of champagne, the expensive bubbles tasting bitter as I hid my knowing smile behind the crystal glass. Just making ends meet with what Theodore provides, I replied softly. Oh, she raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Still in that tiny apartment downtown, what's the address again? 5th Street, I answered quietly, my heart pounding with the weight of my deception. Camden Blackwell, fresh from closing a massive private equity deal, couldn't resist inserting himself into our conversation. Come on, Vic, I could get you a real job, maybe as an assistant at one of my investment firms. I thought about the cryptocurrency portfolio worth $1,500 million sitting in my encrypted digital wallet, numbers that would make his biggest deals look like pocket change. I appreciate the offer, but I'm managing just fine, I said, my voice steady despite the fire burning in my chest. Managing? Margaret's laugh could have shattered the champagne flutes around us. Darling, you're wasting away on $2,000 a month. Your brothers-in-law are investment partners, private equity kings, real players in the financial world, and you're just surviving on our charity. If only they knew that their charity recipient owned more digital assets than all of them combined. The story of how I built my fortune in secret started 10 years ago, 3 days after my husband's funeral in this very house. I was 24 years old, fresh from Harvard Business School with an MBA in finance and a head full of revolutionary ideas about cryptocurrency and emerging technologies. I'd spent sleepless nights researching blockchain technology, convinced that my late husband's family connections could help me navigate the investment world. Instead, they crushed my dreams. Investment strategies? Theodore Blackwell had scoffed, his weathered face twisted with disdain. Leave that to the professionals, girl. Take your insurance money, find a nice savings account, maybe buy some government bonds like a sensible widow. Sensible widow meant staying in my lane, of course. The Blackwell family's idea of financial success was rigidly traditional and exclusively male-dominated. They built their wealth through conservative investments, each portfolio managed by carefully groomed male heirs. Women were expected to marry money or accept monthly allowances, nothing more ambitious. That night, clutching my husband's life insurance check for $50,000, I made 2 decisions that would reshape everything. First, I would build my own investment empire without their guidance or knowledge. Second, I would make them regret every condescending word about women and money. My investment journey began in a cramped studio apartment on 5th Street. The $50,000 barely covered my living expenses, but I possessed something far more valuable than capital. I understood emerging technologies, market psychology, and most crucially, how to spot opportunities that traditional investors missed. My first major investment was Bitcoin in 2014, when it was trading at $600 per coin. Every financial advisor my family recommended had called cryptocurrency digital fool's gold. I invested $30,000, my heart racing as I watched the numbers fluctuate wildly on my laptop screen. Within 18 months, my investment had tripled. Word spread quietly through underground investor networks about the mysterious VB, who had perfect timing on tech investments. I researched obsessively, choosing AI startups, renewable energy companies, and blockchain platforms that shared my vision for the future. Every transaction was anonymous, routed through multiple digital wallets and offshore accounts. My real name never appeared on any investment documents. I was simply a VB, the phantom investor. As my portfolio exploded in value, I maintained my cover as the struggling widow. I kept the tiny apartment even as I secretly purchased luxury properties under shell companies. When my family asked about my finances, I described coupon clipping and budgeting struggles, watching their eyes fill with pitying disinterest. The deception wasn't just about pride, it was pure strategy. The Blackwell family's investment empire was built on acquiring undervalued assets through traditional, slow-moving financial institutions. My specialty was identifying and investing in disruptive technologies before they became mainstream threats to old money portfolios. I worked in digital shadows, quietly building positions in companies that would eventually revolutionize the industries my family dominated. Now, 10 years later, my cryptocurrency and real estate portfolio was worth over $1,500 million. I own stakes in Tesla, Nvidia, and dozens of AI startups that were reshaping global markets. My digital wallet contained more Bitcoin than some small countries' reserves. And not one of my smugly traditional relatives suspected a thing. More champagne, dear. Margaret's voice dragged me back to the opulent present. Though perhaps you should pace yourself. I imagine that monthly allowance doesn't stretch to cover hangovers. I accepted the crystal flute with a practiced, grateful smile. Thank you, Margaret. How's Theodore's new acquisition target progressing? Sterling Technologies, wasn't it? Her confident expression flickered momentarily. There have been some unexpected complications. Nothing Theodore can't overcome, naturally. What she couldn't know was that those complications were entirely my creation. Sterling Technologies had been targeted for Theodore's traditional hostile takeover approach. They'd reached out to me 3 months ago through encrypted channels, desperate for a white knight investor. Now they were implementing my strategic investment plan, their valuation was soaring, and Theodore's antiquated acquisition attempt was crumbling. I heard they secured some mystery investor, Camden added, swirling his whiskey with practiced arrogance. Probably throwing venture capital at a pipe dream. These tech investors are all hype, no substance. I suppressed a knowing smile that threatened to break my carefully maintained facade. My investment in Sterling Technologies was generating more monthly returns than Camden's entire annual salary. Oh, which investor? Some ghost called VB, he waved dismissively, his gold cufflinks catching the chandelier light. Nobody legitimate. Dad says they won't even attend board meetings in person, probably some trust fund millennial playing with daddy's money. My encrypted phone vibrated discreetly in my vintage clutch, displaying a message from my secret partner Delilah. Emergency board meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. Blackwell Capital requesting merger discussion regarding Sterling Technologies. Your decision required immediately. I read the message twice, electric realization coursing through my veins. They were finally admitting defeat with Sterling Technologies. After failing to acquire the company through traditional means, they were seeking a merger, which required approval from Sterling's primary investor. It was me. Tomorrow morning, my family would enter that boardroom expecting to negotiate with some faceless venture capitalist. Instead, they would discover themselves facing the charity case widow they'd patronized for a decade. Except I wouldn't be asking for my monthly allowance. I would be controlling their financial future. Everything satisfactory, dear? Margaret inquired, noticing the subtle shift in my expression. I drained my champagne and flashed my most innocent smile. Absolutely perfect, actually. I should head home, early morning ahead. Oh, volunteering somewhere meaningful? Something precisely like that, I replied, already visualizing tomorrow's power suit. Something exactly like that. The next morning I stood in my private elevator, ascending to Sterling Technologies' executive boardroom in downtown Manhattan. Gone was my late husband's oversized navy suit from last night's gathering. Today I wore a custom-tailored Armani power suit in charcoal gray, the fabric worth more than my supposed monthly allowance. My secret partner Delilah waited at the elevator doors with an encrypted tablet and a conspiratorial smile. The Blackwell Capital team arrived early, she reported as we walked down the marble corridor. Theodore seems particularly eager to meet the mysterious VB investor. I'm certain he is, I checked my reflection in the polished steel wall. Flawless. Are they in the main boardroom? Yes, along with Ms. Chen from Sterling Technologies. Delilah's eyes danced with anticipation. Camden insisted on handling the financial analysis personally. I smiled, remembering Camden's patronizing offer of secretarial work just yesterday. Who else from the family? Margaret came for moral support, though she's not officially part of the negotiation, and Ashton is representing Blackwell's private equity interests. A perfect audience for my grand finale. I checked my Diamond Patek Philippe watch, 8:57 a.m. Have they been offered refreshments? Margaret complained that there was no proper service staff available. Delilah's grin widened mischievously. I informed them that the widow's representative would be joining shortly. I nearly laughed aloud. For 10 years, I'd perfected the role of invisible charity case. Whenever family members encountered me at financial events, they never truly saw the quiet woman accepting their condescending small talk and pocket change. It had been the ultimate camouflage. "Give me 2 minutes," I said, "then present the acquisition documents." I could hear familiar voices through the boardroom's soundproof doors. Theodore's commanding baritone, Margaret's crystalline laugh, Camden's arrogant commentary. Taking a steadying breath, I pushed the heavy doors open. The conversation ceased immediately. Theodore occupied the head of the mahogany table, having predictably claimed the dominant position. Camden and Ashton flanked him, both wearing bespoke suits that proclaimed their inherited privilege. Margaret sat nearby, inspecting her fresh manicure with studied indifference. Ms. Chen from Sterling Technologies sat isolated on the opposite side, visibly uncomfortable. Finally, Margaret sighed dramatically. "We've been waiting for proper service for..." She paused, actually focusing on me for the first time. "Victoria? What are you wearing? And where's the coffee service?" I walked deliberately to the head of the table, claiming the seat directly across from Theodore. "I don't serve coffee anymore, Margaret." "Actually, I never really did." "What is this nonsense?" Theodore demanded, his face already flushing. "Where is this VB character? We were guaranteed a meeting with the actual decision-maker." "You have that meeting." I settled into the leather chair, savoring the bewilderment spreading across their faces. "I am VB. I've been Sterling Technologies' primary investor since I founded my portfolio 10 years ago." The silence that followed was absolutely electric. Camden's mouth fell open like a stunned fish. Ashton dropped his gold pen onto the polished table. Margaret's carefully constructed composure shattered completely. Theodore recovered first, his complexion deepening to an alarming crimson. "This is preposterous. You're a widow living on charity." "No," I replied with perfect calm. "That was strategic misdirection, apparently quite effective since none of you bothered looking beyond your own prejudices. You were so convinced women couldn't handle investments that you never noticed I was already dominating the market." Delilah chose that precise moment to enter with a stack of legal documents. She distributed them efficiently, then positioned herself behind my chair like a loyal lieutenant. "These contracts," I continued smoothly, "outline the terms under which I will consider approving any merger between Blackwell Capital and Sterling Technologies." "Consider approving?" Camden sputtered indignantly. "You can't be serious. This is some elaborate joke, right? Some kind of twisted prank?" I retrieved my phone and projected my cryptocurrency portfolio onto the wall-mounted screen. My current digital assets total over $1,500 million. I hold controlling interests in Tesla, Nvidia, and 47 AI startups, including Sterling Technologies. My approval is mandatory for any significant changes to Sterling's ownership structure. I smiled serenely at my thunderstruck relatives. "Does that appear humorous to you?" "This is absolutely impossible," Margaret whispered, her voice trembling. "You're nobody. You've always been nobody. That's precisely what I needed you to believe." I turned to Ms. Chan with professional courtesy. "Would you care to explain to my family why you chose VB over Blackwell Capital's acquisition offer?" Ms. Chan straightened confidently in her chair. "VB's reputation in emerging technologies is legendary. When Blackwell attempted their traditional hostile takeover, VB's strategic investment saved our company. We've increased our valuation by 340% since implementing their blockchain integration strategy." "Blockchain integration?" Ashton looked physically ill. "The strategy that demolished our acquisition plan?" "That was you?" Among numerous others, I began counting on my manicured fingers. "Quantum computing solutions, which you targeted last year. Green energy dynamics, which you underbid on last quarter. Neural Networks Incorporated, which mysteriously secured funding just before you could acquire them." I leaned forward predatorily. "For 10 years, I've been systematically outmaneuvering every antiquated acquisition attempt your company has launched. Theodore's face had achieved a dangerous purple hue. You deliberately sabotaged family business operations. No, I corrected him icily. I built my own investment empire, one that nurtures innovation instead of consuming it. The fact that it interfered with your predatory practices was simply poetic justice. This is absolutely ridiculous, Camden declared, shooting to his feet. I'm contacting our legal team immediately. Sit down, Camden. My voice carried such absolute authority that he froze mid-motion. You should carefully review those contracts before the ones your firm spent months pursuing for this meeting. I watched horrified comprehension dawn across his features. That's correct, your investment bank's largest commission this year? That was my portfolio too. Delilah stepped forward with another leather portfolio. This summarizes VB's current market position and liquid cryptocurrency assets. You'll notice I'm now positioned to acquire controlling interest in Blackwell Capital, should I choose. The boardroom exploded into pandemonium. Margaret was hyperventilating into her Hermes purse. Ashton was frantically speed dialing on his phone. Camden had collapsed into his chair, looking completely devastated. This is financial blackmail, Theodore snarled. No. I said with quiet finality. This is business, the sophisticated kind you insisted I'd never comprehend. I stood gracefully, smoothing my designer jacket. You have until 5 p.m. today to review my merger terms. They're remarkably generous, considering my dominant position. If you decline, I'll begin purchasing Blackwell Capital stock on tomorrow's opening bell. I moved toward the door, then turned back with devastating precision. Oh, and Margaret? That champagne you so graciously offered me last night? I own the entire vineyard that produces it, acquired it last year. The coffee you were so desperately seeking this morning? I own that chain too. I smiled with radiant satisfaction. Apparently my widow's allowance does accommodate expensive tastes after all. The door closed behind me on their absolutely shattered faces. In my private office, I finally allowed myself to process what had just occurred. 10 years of meticulous deception, of playing the struggling widow, had culminated in this moment. Delilah appeared with genuine coffee, my preferred blend from my own coffee chain. Was it worth the decade-long wait? I thought about all the times I'd accepted their charity in this very building, watching my family patronize me, underestimate me, dismiss me as nothing more than a pitiful widow. Every single second. My phone buzzed, messages flooding in from family members who must have heard about the meeting. I silenced it without reading. They'd have ample time to process their new reality. Right now, I had an empire to manage, and for the first time in 10 years, I could finally do it without concealing who I really was. The next 48 hours were exactly what you'd expect when a family built on tradition and control suddenly discovers they're no longer holding the reins. The messages started flooding in almost immediately after the meeting. Margaret, darling, let's discuss this over lunch. You always were my favorite daughter-in-law. Camden, come on, Vic, we were just teasing. Family should stick together. Ashton, you can't destroy us, we're blood. I ignored them all, focusing instead on rapid-fire emails from Blackwell Capital board members. They weren't fools, they could see which direction the market was moving. By noon, they had scheduled an emergency board meeting. By 3, they had voted to accept my merger terms. Theodore, predictably, didn't surrender quietly. You've betrayed this family, his voice boomed through my office as he stormed in unannounced. Delilah moved to intervene, but I gestured her away. Let him have his final moment. Actually, I said, not glancing up from my computer, I'd say I learned from this family. Isn't this exactly what you taught us? Seize control, eliminate competition, never show weakness. We provided you everything. That made me laugh genuinely. You provided me nothing, less than nothing. You taught me that I would never be worthy, that my only value was accepting your charity. So I built something superior. By deceiving everyone for a decade? I finally met his gaze. By letting you deceive yourselves. You saw exactly what you expected to see, a helpless widow who knew her place. That was your blindness, not mine. The fight seemed to evaporate from him suddenly. He collapsed into one of my visitor chairs, looking more fragile than I'd ever seen him. Why reveal yourself now? You could have continued operating in shadows. Because it was time, I closed my laptop. Sterling Technologies isn't the only company you're targeting. There's quantum computing, green energy dynamics, at least 3 others. Companies with innovative people, solid products, that just need strategic investment. I'm tired of watching you devour them. It's business, he protested weakly. No, it's greed, and it ends now. I handed him a portfolio. These are the final merger terms. VB Investments will acquire controlling interest in Blackwell Capital. We'll restructure the company to focus on nurturing businesses, not consuming them. You can remain as a consultant if you accept the new direction. If not, your retirement package is outlined on page 3. He opened the portfolio with shaking hands. You planned everything. I learned from the best, I smiled without warmth. Though not in the way you intended. After he left, Delilah brought in a stack of financial newspapers. VB's revelation was already dominating headlines. Mystery crypto investor revealed how one widow built billion-dollar portfolio in secret. Blackwell family stunned, the hidden investment queen they never recognized. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message that actually mattered. My father, who had remained distant from the Blackwell family's politics after my husband's death, had sent a single line. I always knew you had your mother's fire. The following weeks were a tornado of transformations. Blackwell Capital's board enthusiastically embraced VB's new investment philosophy. Their stock price surged 45% on the merger announcement. Companies that had avoided the Blackwell name now actively sought partnerships. The financial press couldn't satisfy their appetite for the story. Margaret attempted to reframe it as a heartwarming family success narrative. We always recognized Victoria's potential, she told one Bloomberg reporter. This simply proves that the Blackwell instinct for smart investments runs in the family. I responded by releasing archived footage from last year's investor meeting, where she had spent 20 minutes explaining to colleagues why women couldn't handle complex financial decisions. The video went viral across LinkedIn. She ceased giving interviews after that. Camden attempted his own damage control, claiming he had been secretly advising my investment strategy. Unfortunately for him, too many people had witnessed his devastated expression in that boardroom. His investment banking clients began questioning his market insight. Within a month, he was quietly encouraged to take extended leave. Ashton adapted most quickly, approaching me with a partnership proposal just 2 weeks after the revelation. We could dominate global markets together, he suggested over an uncomfortable lunch. The Blackwell VB alliance would be unstoppable. That's not what my investment philosophy represents, I told him. We don't dominate, we innovate. The genuine changes occurred in quieter moments. The young female analyst who emotionally thanked me for proving that success didn't require compromising authenticity. The women investors who began reaching out, sharing their own stories of being dismissed by traditional finance. The business schools that invited me to speak about building ethical wealth in a male-dominated industry. 3 months after the revelation, I stood on stage accepting the FinTech Innovation Award. Scanning the audience, I spotted my father sitting in the front row, radiating pride. Behind him sat several women from my early investment network, all who had helped maintain my anonymity while building their own portfolios. Success isn't about accumulating the most assets, I told the crowd. It's about how you leverage your resources. For 10 years, I played a role that made powerful people underestimate me. I could have revealed myself earlier, but I chose to wait until my portfolio was strong enough to create meaningful change. The applause was deafening, but the real satisfaction came later that evening. I was working late in my office when Delilah brought in intriguing news. Theodore had just announced his retirement. His resignation letter included an unexpected paragraph. My daughter-in-law taught me that true investment success isn't measured in hostile acquisitions or market dominance, but in the positive innovation we foster. I regret that it required losing control of my company to learn this lesson. I leaned back in my chair, contemplating the long strategy one had executed. 10 years of meticulous planning, of accepting condescension and playing powerless, had led to this moment. VB Investments wasn't just profitable, it was revolutionizing how finance operated. The next family gathering would certainly be fascinating. I planned to host it myself, in Sterling's main boardroom, the same room where I had accepted their charity countless times, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to reveal who I really was. Delilah knocked on my door. "Your 4 p.m. is here," the CEO of quantum computing, the company Theodore was trying to acquire. I smiled. "Show them in, and Delilah? Bring coffee for everyone, the premium blend from our chain." As I stood to greet my visitors, I caught my reflection in the window. No more hiding, no more playing helpless. I had built something extraordinary, not despite my family's dismissal, but because of it. They had taught me that power doesn't always look like what people expect. Sometimes it looks like a quiet widow in an oversized navy suit, accepting monthly allowances while building a cryptocurrency empire right under everyone's nose. The tabloids called it revenge, the financial papers called it strategic brilliance, but for me, it was simply justice, served one investment at a time, with a side of perfectly brewed coffee. And somewhere in a cramped studio apartment on 5th Street, my original laptop still sits. I keep it as a reminder that success doesn't always wear designer labels or demand attention. Sometimes it works quietly, patiently, building something extraordinary while the world looks the other way. That's the real secret to success, not the power you show, but the power you build when no one's watching.